Hi folks, Mr. Long here. We're going to do a screencast today to talk about BEDMAS and how you use it with Graspable math. So the first thing we're going to talk about are exponents, and well, actually not exponents, but let's talk about BEDMAS first, right? So BEDMAS is stands for brackets, and that's what you do first. Then we have exponents. That's when you're doing repeated multiplication. And then division and multiplication go together. And then finally, and that's why I'm going to put a little box around that because they go together. You can do multiplication before division. It just depends. It's the order that you see it. Okay, then addition and subtraction. And again, the order doesn't matter. You can do adding before subtracting or subtracting before adding as long as they come in sequence. All right, so I just want to go through some of the commands on Graspable Math to make sure you understand them. So the first thing is how do you do exponents? So let's go over and we're going to grab that 2. By the way, you call the 3 the base and the 2 is the exponent. So if I grab the whole thing, the base and the exponent move. Now if I grab the 2 and I bring it to the right, I'm going to bring it to the left here, maybe. It doesn't seem to do anything. But what does give me the answer? Well, if I click it, or if I double click it, I'll get the answer of 9. So 3 squared is 3 times 3, and that's 9. Let's try the 10 cubed to the right. What's more interesting about this one is that the 10 is inside a bracket. So we know we have to do brackets first before we do exponents because of BEDMAS. And brackets and then exponents. But what if there's nothing inside the bracket? That 10 is just by itself. So if I click on the bracket, it just removes the bracket, right? Because there was nothing to do inside the brackets. Now I can grab the 3. I can see if I move around, it doesn't do anything. And now I can click on it. Double click on it, and my answer is 1,000. That's 10 times 10 times 10. Yep, 10 cubed is 10 times 10 times 10. Now let's do some verification of that, make sure that's right. So I'm just going to add a math expression here. And I'm going to do 10 times 10 times 10. I want you to see if you can figure out the mistake I'm making. So I'm making a mistake right now. Watch what happens. So I click on that times. So I've made a mistake there. That's actually not 10 times 10 times 10. Now there I've done 10 times 10, but whoa, what's that mean? 10 times 10. Oh, times 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 is times squared? That's not times, is it? What is that? That was x. So in other words, I wasn't multiplying there. I was putting 10 with an x beside it, which means I am multiplying, but 10 and x, not 10 and 10. So if you notice, now I'm showing you the symbol right now, that x is not times, that is the letter x in an equation, a variable. The times is below the divide there. And now that's how we get 10 times 10 times 10. So if I click the button in between, 10 times 10 is 100. Now click that again, and 100 groups, or 10 groups of 100 is 1,000. So in fact, 10 cubed, 10 to the exponent of 3, is 10 times 10 times 10, or we can say the third power of 3. Excuse me. There are many ways to do multiplication with Graspable math. There's the first way. Okay, just a 4.5. That means 4 times 5. And that's not a decimal, right? That's multiplication. Next one, I have brackets beside each other. Why is this multiplication? Well, there's nothing in the bracket, so I just click the bracket to get rid of it. Click the other bracket, that gets rid of it. And now it shows 4 times 5. So when you have 2 brackets beside each other, that's multiplication too. And then I click on the multiplication symbol, the dot, and I can see that those are all the steps that I took to get that. Okay, next one. So the big thing here is comprehension, right? I want you to be able to read these things and know what it means. So that, oh, we got rid of the bracket. Then we multiplied them together and I got our answer. So it looks to me like 4 times 5 shown that way, with the dot means multiplying 4 and 5, 4 groups of 5. Then with 2 brackets beside each other, it's once again multiplication. And finally, one number with a bracket beside it is also multiplication. Okay, so there's 3 different ways to show multiplication here when it's between numbers. All right, let's now start talking about brackets. Why do we use them? What are they for? And they're what's called a grouping symbol. Like if I ask you to make groups of things, um, of like things, well, you would take like things and, if you were grouping, if you had a box of squares and triangles and I asked you to group them, you'd put all the triangles together and all the squares together. That's making a group. So a bracket groups certain numbers together depending on what the problem is. So here's a simple problem. Dave has 4 candies, Sue has 1 candy. How much is double of their combined number of candies? Okay, this is, a grade 1 problem, right? But and you can all do this. The question is, now you need to be able to, when you're in 9 applied, is you need to be able to represent this algebraically with numbers, so in a proper equation. And that's tricky. So think about, how do you actually do this yourself? How do you do it? Well, what you do is the first thing you probably do is add the 4 and the 1 to get 5 and then double it. So let's show that with proper mathematical form. So the 4 and 1, I group it together, which I do by putting brackets around it. And if you look, I'm just going to move this over here. Oh, no. So when I want to move things, there is a command that allows you to move things. Okay, so 4 plus 1 brackets 2. What do the brackets tell me I need to do? It gives me information. Brackets give me information. It just says, okay, you can't get the total number of candies if you double until you add those 2 together, the 4 and the 1. You have to add those together. So what happens? Let's see. If I click on, I'm just going to click on the bracket and see if anything happens in a second here. Because if I click on the bracket, the last times when I clicked on the bracket disappeared. But now it doesn't disappear. Well, why is that? Well, that's because I had to do the adding first before the bracket would disappear. So now I've done the adding. Now I just double it, 5 times 2. Okay, so I'm going to try something else over here. Now what if, and I'll move that again so it's a little bit easier to see. What happens if I change the order that those numbers show up in? So in other words, I bring the 2 to the front of the bracket. Is that the same thing? I don't know. So now it's reading 2 multiplied by, because number in front of a bracket means multiply, but in the brackets are 4 plus 1. So again, I could click on the bracket and it doesn't do anything. Now this is a command that you're not going to need right now. That's called the Distributive Law. We've already done a bit of that actually, but I think for now we're not going to worry about that so much. So I'm just going to show you what the calculation looks like now. So now if I have 2 times 4 plus 1, oh, look at that. I just do the bracket 4 plus 1 and I still get 10. So it doesn't matter if the 2 is in front or behind the bracket. I have to do the bracket first. BEDMAS, B, bracket. I must do the bracket first. Okay, and that, folks, is your screencast on how to do BEDMAS, order of operations, with Graspable Math. And now you're going to go on and you're going to work through a series of questions without a lot of guidance. I want you more experimenting, and then you're going to answer a question in Google Classroom when you're done. Good luck.